thing we will come to know that Saadat Hasan Manto, who is he? The author of this particular book. So Saadat Hasan Manto was born in the year of 1912 to 1955, was a renowned Urdu short story writer, playwright, and essayist, and famous for his bold and realistic portrayal or description of society. His works often explore what themes of partition, right? So, like you talk about GAC3, all the units are indicating nothing but a partition, isn't it? All the units. So, among them also you would find out Saadat Hasan Manto's written Toba Tek Singh is also one, right? So, what happened here? You find out that Saadat Hasan Manto's works often explore themes of partition, human psychology, and social hypocrisy. Hypocrisy means called as a backstabbing or called as a kind of a critical mind, critical mindset. So Manto is the best known for his what poignant storyteller, poignant storyteller or narratives on the partition of India that held in the year of 1947. So, and Manto depicted nothing but the pain, ridiculous or absurdity, and horror of this historical event. Now, please to understand, here we are not saying that uh, his story is means absurd, painful, and horror. We are saying that the time, 1947, isn't it? That time was nothing but a full of horror, full of pain, full of absurdity, which he narrated. So why? Because it is the historical event. It is true, with the sharp irony and the deep humanism, isn't it? So that's what is called as the Saadat Hasan Manto. And his writing, Toba Tek Singh, is one of, you can say that, most famous short stories. So included in Mortal Down. Mortal Down is nothing but called as a collection of his partition-related stories, and that was or that were published by Penguin India, isn't it? So therefore, I pointed Mortal Down, Penguin India. The story means Toba Tek Singh was originally written in which language? Urdu language, and first published in the year of 1955. It is a satirical and a tragic commentary or commentary on the insanity. Insanity means called as the imbalanced mentality, inconsistent mental ability, and the stupidity of the partition of India. Right. So, and if you talk about that, the story is set where the story is set in a mental asylum. Mental asylum. So, in Lahore, mental asylum in Lahore, just after the announcement of the partition of India. So, in 1947, the governments of India and Pakistan decide to what? Exchange. Decide to exchange what? Decide to exchange Hindu, Sikh, and Muslim. Right? So, Muslim lunatics, similar to the population transfers happening across the border, isn't it? So, the protagonist in this particular story. So, what do you mean by protagonist? We say that the protagonist is called the main character. The protagonist, Vishan Singh, his name is called as Vishan Singh. So, Vishan Singh is a Sikh inmate from the town of Toba Tek Singh. Toba Tek Singh. You can say that the town of Toba Tek Singh. It means called as, which is now present in Pakistan, isn't it? So the protagonist Vishan Singh is a Sikh inmate from the town called Toba Tek Singh, now in Pakistan, and you can see that he has been in the asylum. Who has been in the asylum? That Vishan Singh. So in the asylum for years and speaks in a, you can say that gibberish mix of Punjabi. Gibberish, Gibberish, gibberish mix of Punjabi. So not a mix of Punjabi, Hindi, and English, isn't it? So not like others, Bishan Singh is deeply troubled, troubled by the what idea of partition and the forced and what happened that the forced transfer of people, as he cannot understand means where his homeland. So Toba Tek Singh now belongs to him, isn't it? So where is the homeland Toba Tek Singh? So now belongs to, you can say that, Pakistan. So as the exchange of lunatics, when you say lunatics, what do you mean by lunatic? The meaning of lunatic is called as a people who are reserved, right, and mentally disturbed, isn't it? So as the exchange of lunatics takes place at the Wagah border, right, Bishan Singh refuses to move. So when told that his hometown is now in Pakistan, but he is being sent to India, isn't it? He collapses. He collapses in the no man's land between the two borders and dies. Yeah. So that's what is called as ending, you can find out. And that symbolizes nothing but the confusion. That symbolizes nothing but the loss. That symbolizes nothing but the displacement that caused by partition. So partition caused what? Now you would find out confusion, loss, and displacement. And that's the reason you find out Bishan Singh, who died. Got my point? So here you would find out the the partition brings what actually? The partition brings absurdity. What do you mean by absurdity? That called as a ridiculous, stupidity. Isn't it? Why so? Now, because the story highlights the irrationality. Irrationality means illogical. Illogicality of dividing a nation along religious lines. Isn't it? On the basis of the religious ground, what you do, you exchange the people. Isn't it? The idea that even mental asylum means what? Now, people who are mentally tortured, mentally uh, traumatized, they were kept in a kind of a house, right? So, which is known as asylum, mental asylum. So, you find out that the even mental asylum inmates are affected by political decisions is deeply, for them, ironic and tragic, right? So, that's why it is known as absurdity, ridiculous of partition. Second, it's called the identity and belonging. If you read that, you would find out Bishan Singh's struggle. Bishan Singh's struggle reflects nothing but the trauma of millions who were suddenly declared foreigners, right? Suddenly declared foreigners in their own land, isn't it? So, third is called as insanity versus rationality. When you say insanity, what do you mean by insanity? Insanity, mentally retired, mentally abnormal, and rationality. Rationality means that called as a logic. So, it makes a difference between what? Illogic and logic. Illogic and logic. So you find out that the lunatics who are mentally, imbalanced, who live in the asylum, they often make more sense than the political leaders deciding their fates, isn't it? Now you know that all these political leaders, whether you talk about Jawaharlal Nehru or you talk about Muhammad Ali Jinnah or you talk about this Britishers, isn't it? So, uh, Viceroy, or you talk about Mahatma Gandhi. So they all, got united and make a kind of a decision. And that decision bring nothing but what? Means chaos, loss, and displacement to many, isn't it? So therefore, means it is stated that these political leaders whose decision is means insensible, irrationality, rationality, or you can say insanity. Whereas the people who are mentally retired lunatics, they live in the asylum. So sometimes they also take some kind of a logic, isn't it? So how now? Because people who live in India, when they send to Pakistan, so and they say that what it is not their hometown, the hometown is India. So they means what happened to that? It indicates nothing but a what means they have been considered mentally retired or called as a mad, isn't it? But they are not mad. So then they find out their hometown and they settle for a years, for many years. How can one day they will change? Isn't it? So therefore, here we have taken the example called Visan Singh, isn't it? Then the next one you can find out it's called as a symbolism of no man's land. Symbolism of no man's land. Now, if you talk about that Visan Singh's death, Visan Singh dying in no man's land. What do you mean by no man's land? You know that he died means on the border, isn't? So, yeah, Visan Singh dying in no man's land represents nothing but the fate of the luck of countless displaced people who had no clear home after partition, isn't it? So, in that case, you can say Toba Tek Singh remains a timeless masterpiece of partition literature that captures the human cost of political decisions, right? Political decisions in a simple yet powerful way. So, what Manto did here, Manto's use of satire and Manto's use of irony, that makes it one of the most profound and heartbreaking story of its time, isn't it? So the story continues to be relevant in discussions on what when you talk about forced migration. Forced migration means forcefully you send someone to live in another country, isn't it? So, and you change the national identity and you talk about the political divisions, isn't it? Now, in that case, this is nothing but the whole discussion of the topic called Toba Tek Singh, right? But if you go text page by page or you try to understand the deeper part of it, what do you find out? You find out the what you can say that the protagonist, right? The kind of a tone that the author used, the kind of a language that the author has used, and the third is called as the kind of a setting which is included in this literature. So the first thing is called as a setting the stage. When you talk about setting the stage, the story opens. When did the story open? The story opens in a mental asylum. And where that mental asylum? The mental asylum present in Lahore, right, which is in Pakistan. So the story opens in a mental asylum in Lahore shortly after the partition of India in the year of 1947, isn't it? So the asylum houses for whom both Hindu, Muslim, and Sikh inmates. Inmates means called as a means people who live together, isn't it? Who, despite their mental conditions, are indirectly affected by political changes, isn't it? Now, what do you find out in this first part? In the first part, we see nothing but the place where the story begins, and the story begins in a mental asylum in Lahore, which is in Pakistan, and where we find out the characters. Who are the characters? Hindu, Muslim, Sikhs, inmates are present. They are mentally retired. Why they are mentally retired? Now, because of the kind of decisions that the political leaders have taken, isn't it? So, what Manto is trying to point out in this, Manto's irony is called as the partition is a deeply political event. Partition is nothing but a deeply political event. Yet even the insect, right? Yet even the insect is called as a Manto presents it as the it's nothing but a inconsistent or called as a retired mindset people, right? So insane people who are supposed to be detached from the reality and believe that what Now, these people are completely separated from the reality, right? So, and are discussing it and emphasizing its absurdity, right? Absurdity means stupidity, isn't it? Second is called as a madness. Madness as a metaphor. Madness as a metaphor. Metaphor means direct comparison. When you say that the lunatics, who are the lunatics? That called as a mentally retarded people. The lunatics' confusion reflects the general confusion among common people about the logic behind partition. Why do you do the partition? Isn't it? So that's what the confusion. And humor and satire that you find out here is called as some uh, inmates. Some inmates believe that they are important political figures. They are important political figures, and one claims to be God. One claims to be God. Manto uses this absurd declaration to show the irrationality of nationalism. Irrationality means illogicality of nationalism and identity politics. So this gets in the first part of the story. The second part of the story, where you will find out that growing confusion over partition, growing confusion over partition, as news displays that lunatics will also be exchanged. Lunatics will also be exchanged means those people who are living in the mental asylum, so they will be also exchanged, right? So between India and Pakistan, the asylum descends into chaos. The asylum descends into chaos. So, means a place where people were living in the Hindu, Muslim, and Sikh people. So they were in a confusion, right? So what happened here means you would find out that the contrasting perspectives. What do you mean by contrasting perspective? That called as the opposing goals, right? So some inmates discuss whether Pakistan was created for Muslims alone, while others, including a Sikh, worry about their uncertain fate. Uncertain fate means what? One is made for the Hindu, the other one is made for the Muslim. What about the Sikh people? Isn't it? So they worry about their uncertain fate. Uncertain fate means called as unsurety about their destiny or luck, right? So that is what called as a contrasting perspectives. Second is called as a satire of political borders. When we talk about satire of political borders, Manto highlights how even madmen, mentally retired people, or lunatics are means you can say trying to make sense of a decision that the Senate people failed to justify them. Those who are logical, those who are like-minded, those who carry the wisdom, right? Those people do not means justify that why partition is made, right? Even means you can say that madmen are trying to make sense of it, right? So you can say that one of the most absurd or ridiculous moments is when an inmate means one of the mental asylum person, so who climbs a tree and refuses to come down, refuses to come down. Why? Because he was taken to means, migrate from one place to the other place. So that's why. What does he do? Now he climbs a tree and refuses to come down, saying that what I want to stay neither in India and nor in Pakistan. So I want to stay neither in India nor in Pakistan. So that echoing the feelings of many displaced people, and this is not the only means state. This is not the only person who made this statement. So such kind of a statement can be drawn from the different people or many people, and that echoes. Echoes means called as repeats, isn't it? So then, when we go to the third part of the story, we find out that Bishan Singh's introduction. So, whose introduction? Bishan Singh's. Now, in the first and second story, second part of the story, we did not find out Bishan Singh. We only realized that what happened, where did it happen, isn't it? So, Bishan Singh's introduction, and when we talk about Bishan Singh's introduction, his confusion and reputation. His confusion and reputation. Whose confusion? Bishan Singh's reputation and confusion. So when Manto shifts focus to the main character called Bishan Singh, so who is he? Now, a Sikh lunatic, mentally retarded, who has been in the asylum for 15 years, right? For 15 years, he has been in the asylum, mental asylum. So his repetitive question that what Bishan Singh constantly mumbles, mumbles means repeated. Oh, where is Toba Tek Singh? But never gets a clear answer. Where is Toba Tek Singh? So even you can also find out his gibberish speech. His gibberish speech means called a mix of Hindi, English, and you can talk about Sikh language, isn't it? Or Punjabi language. So he mixes what Punjabi, Hindi, and English that symbolizes nothing but the linguistic and cultural diversity. Linguistic and cultural diversity that partition tried to separate. Partition tried to separate. His tragic innocence. His tragic innocence. Not like the other lunatics. Not like the other lunatics who entertain themselves with nonsensical claims. Right. So Bishan Singh's only concern is his ancestral land. His own ancestral land. So this moment highlights what? How partition uprooted. How partition uprooted not just people but also their psychological ties. Uprooted means called as a removing something from the root. Right. That is what mean called uprooted. So, and which moment? The moment you find out that the tragic innocence, how means, these people were means, taken from their ancestral land to a kind of a new land, isn't it? So, this clearly indicates nothing but how partition affects and uprooted not just people but also their psychological ties to home and identity, isn't it? So, in the fourth part of the story, where we understand that the announcement of the exchange, the announcement of the exchange. So, in this part, what happened? The asylum authorities, where that Hindu, Muslim, and Punjabi people were living together. So, the asylum authorities receive official orders that what Hindu and Sikh inmates must be sent to India. Hindu and Sikh inmates must be sent to India. Pakistan, Muslim will stay in Pakistan, isn't it? And Muslim inmates to Pakistan. So that creates nothing but the echoes. Echoes, you understand that repetition of the sounds. Echoes to real displacement. Echoes to real displacement. So this shows a reflection, the real exchange of millions across borders. Isn't it? This shows nothing but the clear picture of the real exchange of millions across borders. Right? Families were separated overnight. Families were separated overnight, and people lose their homes. People lose their homes, much like the asylum inmates. Much like the asylum inmates, with them, they stay together for 15 years, isn't it? So for them, like it's a family, isn't it? So lunatics mimicking politicians. So these mentally retired people were nothing but copying politicians and saying that what some lunatics make satirical criticism, right? What kind of a comments? So some lunatics made a comments on politics and stated that even one inmate mocks. Mocks means criticize whom? Jinnah, Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Jawaharlal Nehru. Why? Now asking whether they will also switch places, whether they will also switch places like the lunatic, like the asylum inmates, like the asylum inmates. So yes, Muhammad Ali Jinnah went to Pakistan, and you find out Jawaharlal Nehru stay in India, isn't it? So, in the fifth part of the story, where we understand that Bishan Singh makes his a family, makes it family. So, before being sent to India, so Bishan Singh's relatives visit him where? Now, after years, right? After years means he was there in the mental asylum for 15 years. So, after years, Bishan Singh's relatives visit him. So there you would find out emotional disconnection. Emotional disconnections. How? Now you would find out that his family tells him he is going to India. His family tells him that he is going to India, but he doesn't understand what that means. What that means. So, and here you would find out the symbol of displacement. Symbol of displacement. He represents thousands of people who were told their home was no longer there. So his home was no longer, or their home was no longer theirs, isn't it? So, and but they could not hold the reality of it. They cannot draw the reality of it, isn't it? So that is what you would find out in the sixth part of the story, where you would find out that the transfer of India begins. Now, in the fifth part, where you find out Bishan Singh's relatives came and they informed him that he was going to India, and he was confused that he was living in India. Then how come he was going to India? Because before partition, so Pakistan was not separated. India and Pakistan both considered one, isn't it? So therefore, he got confused, right? So and when and it's not about his confusion. You would find out all the other asylum members were also confused, right? So the transfer of India begins, or the transfer to India begins. The lunatics are rounded up. Lunatics means mentally retired people are rounded up and they were transported to the Wagah border, right? So where they will be handed over to whom? Indian authorities. So, and here when you find out the chaotic and absurd scene, chaotic means confusion and stupidity scene found out. How? Now many inmates, many, close friends of asylum, lunatic or mental asylum. So they refuse to leave. They said that they don't go. Right. So while others have no idea what is happening, isn't it? So the bureaucratic exchange of mentally ill people, the bureaucratic exchange of mentally ill people mirrors how officials dealt with the refugees. So they see also how the officials dealt with the people, common and innocent people. So treating them as mere statistics rather than human beings. How many people have migrated from one place to the other place? So just counting them, isn't it? So that's something called as bureaucratics were doing. So and here you would find out all the people were held up in held up where? On the border side. Right. Why? Because these people were confused. These people did not show interest to go the other sides, isn't it? So, in the seventh part of the story, you would find out Bishan Singh's final moment. And what happened in this Bishan Singh's final moment, which will be called as a tragic climax. Tragic climax or ending, as Bishan Singh's name is called. So he refuses. He refuses to do what? He refuses to move. He refuses to move when he learns that Toba Tek Singh is in Pakistan while he is being sent to India. Isn't it? Toba Tek Singh is in Pakistan and he is being sent to India. So this clearly indicating nothing but the powerful symbolism. And here you would find out Bishan Singh represents all those who were forcibly uprooted and could not reconcile the idea of their home suddenly becoming a foreign land. So the place where he lives for many years, now that land becomes foreign land for him, isn't it? So therefore, means what happened here? Um, and he realizes that what means he is no longer back to his means motherland. So, and where he is now, he is in no man's land, right? No man's land means that border, the border is known as a no man's land. So he collapses abruptly and dies. He collapses abruptly and dies in the strip of land between India and Pakistan. So that's symbolizing the fate of the forgotten, that fate of the stateless, the fate of the forgotten, the fate of the stateless, and the fate of the displaced, isn't it? So, in the final analysis, what we find out, the message of Toba Tek Singh is what? The partition as a tragedy. Partition as a tragedy beyond politics, isn't it? So the story reveals that what partition did not just affect the nations. What partition did? Now partition shattered personal identities. Right? Partition did not just affect nations, but also shattered the personal identities. Right? And here it is said that you are continuously telling that lunatics, lunatics, lunatics. But these lunatics have logic, whereas the means, logical people have shown insanity, isn't it? So therefore, it is indicating that the so-called lunatics have a better hold of humanity than the sane or sanity politician. Right. So borders as meaningless constructs here. Bisan Singh's final stand in no man's land that reflects what? How borders are merely political lines. Borders are really political lines that can never erase, that can never omit personal connection to one's land and one's home. Isn't it? So, all total, if you say, Toba Tek Singh is one of the most powerful short story on partition, capturing its confusion, heartbreak, and absurdity through the lens of madman, who ultimately proves that what? To be the sanest of all. Who ultimately proves what? That these madmen are better than the sanest, right? Better than the sanest of all. Manto's use of satire, irony, and tragedy. Satire, irony, and tragedy. What do you mean by them? Satire means criticism. Irony means called as two different ideas, and tragedy is called as a sorrow, sadness. Makes this a timeless critique of political decision that ignore human suffering, isn't it? Now, all total in a short summary, if I say that, Toba Tek Singh by Saadat Hasan Manto. Saadat Hasan Manto is a, like I said, that short story presented in a mental asylum in Lahore during the partition of India in 1947. The story explores what? The confusion and suffering caused by the sudden division of the country, isn't it? So the asylum inmates who are mentally ill become aware of the political changes and discuss India and Pakistan in absurd, right? Absurd ways. Absurd means stupidity ways. So they reflects the real world confusion. The government orders the exchange of these madmen based on religion. Muslim will stay in Pakistan. Hindus and Sikhs will be sent to India. So the protagonist Bisan Singh, right, a Sikh inmate from Toba Tek Singh, Sikh inmates. So from Toba Tek Singh, so a town in Pakistan is deeply troubled by the partition. Right? He constantly asks that where is my town, Toba Tek Singh? So, but never gets a clear answer. So when the transfer begins, Bisan Singh does what? Bisan Singh refuses to move after learning that his hometown is in Pakistan, not in India, isn't it? But he is being sent to India forcefully. In the tragic climax, we find out that he lapses and dies in the no man's land between India and Pakistan. And that symbolizing the confusion, loss, and displacement of millions who were uprooted during the partition, isn't it? So that is what you would find out in this particular means novel, or you can say short story. If you talk about the main idea of this short story, to highlight nothing but what ridiculous and suffering of the partition of India in the year of 1947. Through the lens of madness and displacement, Saadat Hasan Manto uses what? Uses the setting. Setting means called as a background, that the place of mental asylum, to show how political decisions that are taken in the means Senate or Parliament made by so-called sane or mentally balanced leaders, they resulted in chaos and suffering for ordinary people. But their decisions are nothing but confusion and suffering for ordinary people, isn't it? Now, through the protagonist Vishal Singh, who struggles to understand why his homeland Toba Tek Singh is suddenly part of another country, isn't it? So, Manto critiques the arbitrary nature. Arbitrary means called as an absolute nature of the politicians. So, who rules one and all, right? So, of borders and arbitrary nature of means these leaders on the arbitrary nature of border, right? And the loss of identity caused by partition, isn't it? So, Vishal Singh's final moment, that dying in no man's land between India and Pakistan, symbolizes the fate of those who were uprooted and left stateless. Isn't it? Ultimately, the story expresses what? The madness. Right. The madness exists not only in asylums, but also in the political field, where the politicians take the decisions. So they were also considered as the madmen that divide nations and destroy lives, isn't it? So that's what. Yeah. So you can say that what you can say the title Toba Tek Singh is a justified one here. Why? Because it is deeply symbolic. It is essential to understand the story's message. Why Toba Tek Singh? It's a name of a place. Why it is given as the title of the short story. So it refers to the hometown of the protagonist, Bisan Singh. So a Sikh inmate in a Lahore mental asylum, isn't it? So who is unable to understand the political division of India and Pakistan. So Toba Tek Singh as a symbol, identity, and belonging. So because it's stated that Bisal Singh repeatedly asked, so where is Toba Tek Singh? Where is Toba Tek Singh? But never receives a clear answer. First. Second, for him, Toba Tek Singh represents a home. Right. So for him, for Bisal Singh, Toba Tek Singh represents a home, identity, and a sense of belongings, isn't it? Which partition has taken away from him, isn't it? Then the third is called as his confusion highlights the displacement of millions. So, like him, millions of people are also getting confused, isn't it? Who lost their homes overnight due to this arbitrary nature or ruling borders, arbitrary or one rule border. Uh, so means arbitrary rule, you can say that. So secondly, you can say Toba Tek Singh as a metaphor for partition's absurdity. When we say that the title reflects what? Irrationality or partition. Irrationality means there is no logic of separation, isn't it? Where people were forced to leave their lands based on religion, even if they had lived there for generations, right? So the irony is that what even a madman understands, even a madman understands the deep connection that he or she has to his or her homeland better than the politicians, right? Who make the arbitrary judgment, isn't it? Who drew the borders, isn't it? So that's what is called as a kind of a idea that resembles Toba Tek Singh. Then the third is called as the tragic climax also indicates nothing but what you can say. The tragic climax also justifies the title. That what? Now Toba Tek Singh becomes no man's land. No man's land means it's nothing but a uh, means whether it is present in Pakistan or whether it is present in India. So that makes the confusion to the Bisan Singh, and he dies, isn't it? So Bisan Singh refuses to move when he learns that Toba Tek Singh is in Pakistan while he is being sent to India, right? So he collapsed and dies in no man's land between the two newly created nations. He dies in no man's land. What do you mean by no man's land? You will find out. We call new man's land because it is newly created two different countries. You can't say India, the old India, because old India connects with the Pakistan. So new India doesn't connect with Pakistan, right? So, and you find out Pakistan is newly formed, and India and Pakistan, there is a border between them. So, on the border, if you die, you are not neither from India nor from Pakistan. So, you are in a no man's land, isn't it? So, between, and here, no man's land is nothing but called as a metaphor, direct comparison, right? That what somebody who neither belongs to India nor belongs to Pakistan. So between the two newly created nations, that symbolizes those who did not fit into the new political realities. So here, millions of the people are not fit into the newly created political rules, isn't it? So the title Toba Tek Singh is justified because it represents the emotional, physical dislocation. Emotional, that the emotion connected to the place, and physical, you are physically connected to the place. So that have been dislocated, displaced, isn't it? So, and how? Why did it dislocate or displace me? Because the cause is called as a partition, isn't it? And it highlights how home is not just a place. How home is not just a place on a map, but an integral part of one's identity. So, and Manto uses Vision Singh's attachment to his hometown to expose the cruelty of dividing a country without respecting for the people who lived there, isn't it? So, therefore, this title Toba Tek Singh is justified, right, as for the Mantu. Fine. That's all. Please